Z will be the last generation with white majority in the US. Gen Z Americans born between 1997 and 2012 will be the last generation with a white majority, a new study has found. Updated US Census data suggests non-Hispanic white people will make up less than half the country's population by around 2045.
Okay, guys. And in closing, I'm going to play this last video, and I want you to really think about what the speaker is saying. It's going to be about a minute clip, but really pay attention to what she's saying and how it relates to this problem. The problem that I've been highlighting over and over again is that white women are choosing to date non-white men. Non-white men are
In 1492, Christopher Columbus discovers Hispaniola. In 1493, Alexander VI, the Pope at the time, is going to create a papal bull or a decree called the Intera Cateda. And this decree is going to say that the Spaniards and the Portuguese are going to divide the New World, and that this is going to give them the right to convert, subjugate, and to create their influence on the people that they meet and convert them to Catholicism. It's also going to create the encomienda system. And the encomienda system is also a decree where a racial and political hierarchy is created, and that the resources are extracted and brought back to Spain, essentially what we now call colonization.
So this guy, Chief Wakara, it says, was one of the principal Indian chiefs when the Mormons first entered this area in 1848. Feared from California to New Mexico, he was remarkably sly chief, daring horse thief, savage slave trader, furious enemy, admirable friend, and unprincipled lover. He became a war chief, unrivaled in his ability to lead his band with cunning, power, and fierceness. His name refers to yellow buckskin, nicknamed the Hawk of the Mountains and Napoleon of the Desert. He was an opportunist in the changing of the West. He was more notorious than great, more bandit than chief, without question, white and Indian alike. He was the West's greatest horse, and which were later colonized by the Europeans. Then we're going to talk about the Indian Act of 1850, which basically, according to the author, worked to further legalize the subjugation of Native Americans. Then we're going to talk about a new era of Indian bondage, okay? A new era of Indian bondage, guys. And what was going on in this time period, guys. So now we're going to talk about Utah. Utah is a beast, okay? I've been to Utah. I've been out west. I've been to like where the Navajos live and stuff like that. I've been to all of the states on the mainland except those north of New York. So that's about 45 states. So when you see this, this is an example of smallpox. This is some of the things that the Native Americans was going through, right? And what the author says is that yellow fever, smallpox, and other illnesses. Now we don't even know what the other illnesses are. Other illnesses take out thousands of natives. Then chapter 9 is called contractions and expansions. So they realize, like, man, this the way that we're ruling. They realize, like, man, the the way that we're ruling is too much. It's too much violence. So you know what they did? They created what was called debt bondage. So they're going to say, hey, you owe me money. That the Americans are going to move out west. And this is going to increase the Indian slave trade. Then debt is going to be used to coerce Indians into a lifetime of servitude. That's where I got stuck at, because that's so heavy that I had to go and start sharing past videos of how what he's saying has to be true. Okay, the canyon, the Chili, was a stronghold of Navajos and a focus point of these chapters from chapter 10 to 12. Okay, so the Navajos are being attacked by other Indian nations. So the Navajos are going to be severely weakened. And then this is the time that's going to go into right leading towards the Civil War. Okay, the United States military is going to help weaken, and then they're going to bring the Navajos into servitude. Northern case, John Elk, a Native American, left his tribe and started living among white citizens in Omaha, Nebraska. He wanted to vote, claiming that he had become a U.S. citizen by just choosing to live outside his tribe and follow U.S. laws. But Charles Wilkins, his registrar, refused to let him register to vote, saying Elk was not a U.S. citizen. Main question: can a Native American become a U.S. citizen just by leaving their tribe and living like a U.S. citizen? What did the Supreme Court decide? The court said no. Just leaving your tribe and living in U.S. society doesn't make you a citizen. Why did they say that? The 14th Amendment says that anyone born in the U.S. and subject. I'm trying to draw a comparison. I'm about to land my plane, but we have to talk about how we got here. A lot of people don't understand how we got here.
So let's talk about the people that we now refer to as Filipinos. So the second viceroy of New Spain, Luis des Velasco, is going to send Miguel Lopez Conquistador to the Philippines, and he is going to set up the encomienda system there. They are going to create a mestizo racial class. They're going to send Spaniards there to create a Peninsulores class, and they are going to enforce their government and hierarchy and colonize the lands. Well, they're also going to export Filipino people to the New World in Americas and put them into servitude in Mexico as well as in Central America. So they're going to use the Filipino country as a base to export and import resources to the New World as well as Asia. And the Mayan of Yucatan end up being incredibly successful, and they said that they used machetes even if they had guns, and they would capture the women, abuse them, because these people had been abused and mistreated in Mexican society for 300 years, from the Spanish invasions to the Mexicans taking them over, and they had always resisted. And at this time period, they were being colonized where they couldn't eat any of the food or keep any of the food for themselves. Everything that they had to be exported to the United States and these other countries. So what ends up happening is the whites and the mestizos piled up in Merida, and the Mayans were going to exterminate them. And then they see these insects and they take it as a sign that they should stop. Things got so bad for the Mayans of Yucatan during this time period, and they were put in this servitude and having to do all of this backbreaking work. Their women were beaten, the men were beaten, they had to work in these fields, and they had these overseers that would just beat them and mistreat them and even unalive them. So what began to take place was one happening where an entire Mayan village named of Taipec was completely wiped out of men, women, children, and even the elderly. And the whites and the mestizos murdered all of these people. So the Mayans are going to start a caste war, which lasts for a very long time, where they try to expel all of the whites and all of the mestizos out of the Yucatan by unaliving them. So after the war with Spain and Mexico becomes Mexico, the problem that Mexico is going to face outside of the bankruptcy that they're experiencing and the political divisions is that it's a vast territory. We're talking about all the way up to Oregon, all the way down to, at this time, El Salvador and Honduras. So Mexico is a lot bigger than the Mexico that we now know as Mexico. We're trying to explain how Mexico got decreased in size to the point that it is now. But they have so many different problems because within Mexico, you have the Spaniards, you have Peninsulars, you have Macitos, Creoles, Indios, Negroes, and at this time period, all of the white clergy owned everything. They owned all of the land, and the people that don't own any. After Mexico becomes Mexico and they end the war with Spain, Spain effectively still has a vast amount of territory. So what Spain does is they say, hey, you can trade with all of the other colonies. Now, this is going to have far-reaching consequences because imagine you're a country, right? And you can't control what comes in and what goes out. You can't control your ports. So while they won the battle, it was still an economic war still taking place that Spain was waging on Mexico, hence why Mexico was poor. So the people in the Yucatan, the ruling class, they had closer relationships with the Spaniards because it's a port area on the Gulf. So they wanted to do business with Cuba, which was still a part of Spain, but the problem was that the governors of Mexico and the president had outlawed trade with Spain. So leading up to Texas and the Alamo, Mexico had a major issue. They were bankrupt and running out of money, along with political divisions. So all of these countries are becoming independent. Honduras, Costa Rica, Guatemala, El Salvador. Okay, Yucatan and Chiapas becomes independent. And so at this time period, Texas is also threatening to become independent. And the problem that Mexico had was when they finally got the Spaniards off their back, their population had dwindled from 20 million to 6 million. And then in Texas at this time period in the 1820s, no Mexicans wanted to move to Texas because their population was strongest in central Mexico. And then in the region of Texas, you had Apaches, Comanches, Wichitas, Catos, and other Indians that made up that land.
Se veta la Alamo, a clash up cultures and racial conflict.
Racial undertones because the Anglo-Saxons who were Mexican citizens, they were Protestant. They spoke different languages than the Mexicans, which they thought that they were better than the Mexicans, and they actually expelled Mexicans out of Texas, right? And so they wanted to practice slavery, and this brought into a lot of conflict. Meanwhile, it was an identity issue going on because you had Native Americans, tribes there, who also were resisting Mexico and did not want to view themselves as Mexican because they had been resisting the Spanish Empire. So it was a lot that was going on in this time period. And unfortunately, this tale is not really talked about enough. So after Texas becomes an independent territory, right? And this puts Mexico in a weaker position against the United States. Now, in the United States, they had about 22 million people. In Mexico, they had about 7 million people. So what ends up happening is you have President Santa Anna in Mexico, and then you have James K. Polk in the United States. So James K. Polk puts his United States military on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande. Eventually, shots are fired. James K. Polk says that American has died on American soil by the hands of a Mexican, which is really untrue because they were in Mexico. Then this brings them to war in Mexico. The story ends with Santa Anna being forced because he couldn't really fight a war, even though he tried. Him having to sell the western states of the United States for $15 million. And as a result, a lot of the Hispanic people that were in Mexico would now become American. Now, mind you, during this time period, about 20 years or 15 years before the Civil War, slavery is still legal, and the Anglo-Saxons, they wanted to enslave the Mexicans. So what ended up happening was they passed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which basically gave them all of the land in exchange for as a legal status that the United States would consider. So when Vicente Guerrero made slavery illegal in Mexico, and therefore Texas, which was a part of Mexico, this brought them into conflict with the United States, because the United States was saying after the Louisiana Purchase in 1804, 20 years later, they at this time period, they were saying that slavery was still legal. Now, 30 years later, the United States would fight a civil war over the issue of slavery, but this was like a precursor to that time period. Now, Mexico was in no way, shape, or form had the power to enforce their laws, because why? Well, they had been internal conflict in their own countries. So Vicente Guerrero is put to death. You have coup after coup after coup of every Mexican president. And so the United States is licking his lips saying, hey, you guys, we can just take this land because they are not people of the land. The invaders had to find a way to connect their Catholic religion with the indigenous religion of the land. So the indigenous people had a mother goddess by the name of Tenochtitlan. She was a mother goddess that all of the local people praised, worshiped, had statues of, and was very close to them, and was a representation of their belief system. Well, the Catholics, they had the Virgin Mary. And so this figure was merged into the two. So the indigenous people related to the Catholic religion by saying, okay, their goddess is like our goddess. And as years went on, 100 years, 200 years, the images fused together and their belief system was united. And so in this video, I am trying to explain how their belief system strengthened their unity. So when we believe the same thing, it makes us see one another as like, right? Instead of an other. So regardless of how the people looked, whether they were Indios, which is Indian, whether they was Mesito, whether they was Creoles, whether they were Pensalores, whether they were coming fresh off the boat from Spain, this belief system united the people. So the legend of the Virgin of Guadalupe is that this man named Juan Diego in the 16th century seen an apparition, and the apparition came to him and spoke to him and let him know that although that all of this was taking place in Mexico,
will be the last generation with white majority in the US. Gen Z Americans born between 1997 and 2012 will be the last generation with a white majority, a new study has found. Updated US Census data suggests non-Hispanic white people will make up less than half the country's population by around 2045.
Okay, guys. And in closing, I'm going to play this last video, and I want you to really think about what the speaker is saying. It's going to be about a minute clip, but really pay attention to what she's saying and how it relates to this problem. The problem that I've been highlighting over and over again is that white women are choosing to date non-white men. non-white men are Whistling said, and this is the basis for my discussion tonight, guys, on why racism exists, but also relating to the unspoken rules navigating interracial dating in a divided world. So I am going to play this lecture, then we're going to go into modern times and what's going on in the modern world. So thank you for joining me.
Clue about what is going on. See, we've been thinking, and God bless Dr. Martin Luther King, a minister but a great political scientist. He said it's about love. Everybody should love. And he got
white men. Like, I just like darker skin. Yeah.
Okay. Like,
Tall, not white. Like, you guys, handsome as what?
Man, I'm so glad we have these videos, because in the past, people would probably say that we were lying. People would probably say that we were lying.
I'm going to tell you why the Slavic women, they like the black.
So this is a European woman, and she is going to talk about why European women, now she's from Eastern Europe, why they want or are attracted to black men. And guys, I try. A lot of women are showing you who they want, and they're rejecting their own men, and they're seeking out black men as a symbol of their rebellion, of the forbidden fruit.
I like my man tall and skinny, you know? That way when it's time for me to get on top.
Even a garden.
Pick him up, slam.
Even a garden, taking the forbidden fruit, When people hear things like that, or they experience things like that, it makes them seek out what they're being told to stay for black men. I think in the States, I'm going to go with the States. Historically, it has always been taboo. Historically, it has always been taboo for white women to be with black men. However, white men have always had access to black women, or other races of women for that matter, from the Spaniards conquering Latin America to them conquering the Philippines and, colonizing. And that's what really colonization really means, is that I could control these people, and it's nothing that the men of that culture can do about it. Not the union or the relationship that's the problem. Is that it's a difference in power dynamics, right? At the end of the day, when a white person dates a black person, the black person is a victim in the system because they are non-white. And we live in a system controlled and dominated by whites. So when they get out of bed or when they leave the house, one person is white and the other person is not. So what does that mean? That means that one person is free and the other person is not. And that's a deeper conversation that I'll probably have next week, talking about the problems that arise with interracial relationships. Because it's a forbidden fruit. And it's interesting. I'm going to play another clip. This might be controversial. But let's get into it.
Black guys or white guys?
Black guys.
Can you elaborate as to why specifically black guys?
Yes, black guys are melanated, and I want my children to survive, and I know that the only way for them to survive in the future is for them to have melanin in their skin. So that's the way for me to, make my legacy continue.
Okay, I like that answer. That's actually a really unique answer. So for you, black guys or white guys?
Black guys.
Can you elaborate as to why specifically black guys?
Yes, black guys are melanated, and I want my children to survive.
One cop can handle 3 white tea people, but it takes 4 to handle a non-white tea one. You see, when this happened, we were by a river. These cops literally threatened that they were going to drown me in that river, yelling in my face, we could get away with it because you ain't shit, etc. When this was over, I got back in the car, my friends got back in the car, and there was an understanding in that car. After this was over, the understanding was, yeah, sure, we're all Latinos, we're all Mexican, but this is where we learned how you are white and I'm not. See, a lot of people think, and a lot of people, what they do, the mistake that they do when a lot of Mexican, Latinos in Latin American countries, when they are white presenting, they think that they could blend in with people like me, and it doesn't work, and it never has been a truth.
Is they'll take some of these ancient images, guys, like this. This is a good example. They'll take some of these so you see this, right? This is an image of obviously some Siamese twins, right? Some people will look at this and say, "Oh, they were ancient aliens. These were ancient aliens, you guys." Come on, let me show you this. In fact, I'm going to do you one better. You see images like this of Siamese twins. They left artifacts to straight up show you what they look like. Look at this person. This person look like they have dreadlocks. But then when we talk about our history and our existence, people like make fun of us like, oh, you're brainwashed. Oh, you trying to be something you're not. Bro, we're from the Americas. We were in the Americas before there was an America. We were in Mexico before Mexico was Mexico. Look at this. You get what I'm saying? The topic today, guys, is do Black Americans deserve reparations? I'm going to play this video and then we're going to get into it. Thank you for joining me. My name is Brian.
Canal Bank in the interval 1831 to 1865. Were engaged directly in the slave trade by accepting 13,000 enslaved persons as collateral for loans that were issued in Louisiana in the mid-19th century. When borrowers defaulted, the bank took direct ownership of these individuals and apparently sold them off.
To look at this through a historical scope. Slavery, guys. The difference between what happened to us and any other group is that our slavery was racialized. So if you were a person who had a Black parent, your child would then be considered a slave. So we couldn't even get out of it because it was racialized. Since with other people, they had indentured servitude, but it was contractual and it was only for a certain number of years. We couldn't get out of slavery because of the color of guys. We can do direct payments. Direct payments are crucial. It's critical. Why? Because while some people may say, well, we don't want to do direct payments, we want to do education, entrepreneurship, college,
HBCUs. Well, the problem with that, guys, is that that's power to institutions instead of giving it directly to the people who are affected. Could you agree with that? That's either true or it's false, right? Imagine something horrible happens to your family, and instead of paying you directly, someone says, well, we're going to donate the money to a charity, and the charity is going to give you, the person who is bereaved, financial payments. It wouldn't make sense.